Good morning. It's great to see a big crowd here. You can tell it's an election year. You know, you're going to hear the same. If you've heard my speech before the last 2 years, it's going to be the same thing. And I'm going to address the 5 points that you requested that we address, because I've been doing it for 2 years. Because I've seen the problems with local communities. And, you know, my father was a lawyer for a municipality or a county or a school board for 45 years, so I understand the problems of dealing with budgets and the issues that local communities deal with. And I'm from a small community. I started out at Holcomb, Mississippi, a town of about 300. And I now live in Houston, which is a town of about 3,800. So I understand these issues. And when I took office as Attorney General, one of the first things I did was to enforce home rule in our opinions. Used to, for those of you gray hairs that have been around a while, you would see an opinion come back from the Attorney General's office that would say, I see no authority in law for you to do such and such. Well, I just exercised the home rule, and I turned it on the other way around. That unless it's expressly states you can't do something, then you as a local government can. Because our local government is where, you know, we started in forts. It was for security and protecting people, and our local governments have been kicked to the curb in the legislature, well, at least the past 8 years, if not 16 years, and so it's time for us to take the legislature back. The issues that you've asked that we address is a local option. I support that. I fight federal preemption every day as Attorney General, and we agree, Republicans and Democrats, about federal preemption, and it should be the same for the state. But what's happened is those legislators, at least the leadership, they've choked off any ability for you to control and self-govern yourselves, and they've tried to tell you what you need to do, from anything from guns to gays to, you know, all the issues you have to deal with on a regular basis. So I don't support any kind of preemption, and they act like they know best. I support the annex authority, and I support the small municipal and limited counties government program, as well as the Main Street program. And you know, one of the things that I want to do differently is how we do economic development. All the economists now agree that the best bang for a state's buck in economic development is to grow your smaller businesses, your Main Street businesses. Instead of the mega sites, we will still continue to seek the mega sites, but it's much more cheaper because you don't have to build the infrastructure, and things like the Main Street program can help fund that. And if we do create an incentive, be it tax incentive or otherwise, I want the cities where we're going to site one of these facilities to be at the table when the decision is made as to whether to give them some kind of tax break or give away your municipal taxes. And that's going to require us to open up government. And that's been one of the main 4 issues that I've talked about in this race for governor, is that we need to clean our legislature up. What's happened there is that a regular old millionaire can't influence the legislature anymore. It takes a billionaire. It's a big box store. It's the managed care. It's those outfits from out of state that are controlling the agenda in our legislature, and they're doing it by campaign contributions. And so those that are in the leadership positions don't allow hearings on issues to hear the good, bad, and the ugly so you understand the impacts of a bill. So I think we need to open up government by requiring them to be subject to the Open Records Act, just like you are, just like I am. Other state, city, and county government agencies, the legislature, of course, has exempted themselves. That would help us to understand who's whining and dining at night if they had to list who took them to dinner, who sent them a bill to introduce, giving access to their emails, to their phone calls. The same information that's subject to us ought to be applicable to the legislature. There's absolutely no reason for it not to be, other than the fact that they want to do what they want to do and people not see what they're doing. The other thing we need to do is stop them from taking money during the legislative session. It won't cure it, but it'll sure deter some of the activity that you see when they vote on things like they don't even let them have a vote on the road bill. You know, that's 7,000 or 8,000 jobs that we have kicked down the road, and that's when working people are swinging hammers. That's when you can grow your economy. You know, our economy has been flat since 2009. It's grown at a rate of 2%. Not 2% a year, I'm talking about 2%. And Tennessee has gone at a rate of 22, Arkansas at 14, Alabama at 10. What we're doing is not working. You know, all these so-called tax cuts are nothing but giveaways. They've given away our state treasury. They gave away about $750 million of our tax money. The first one was a $350 million a year tax cut. Then they had a $418 million tax cut. $278 million of that was for a franchise tax. Guess what percentage of that franchise tax went to large out-of-state corporations? 78%. Large out-of-state. Didn't help our Main Street businesses in any way. They haven't supported them. And that's something we've got to stop, because they've given away, after it's phased in, about $750 million, and our general fund budget is only $6 billion. And it just in my hometown in Houston, about a few months ago, a young lady, 22 years old, was pregnant, had a 1-year-old child. She had an asthma attack. Her parents took her to the hospital in Houston, because the hospital's open, but the emergency room had closed about 5 years before. And my grandfather actually practiced medicine in the emergency room at the old hospital in Houston back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And so they get that young lady to the emergency room. It's closed. They get her back to town on the street in Houston, Mississippi, at the fire station, and she died of an asthma attack. Now, that's like a third world country. You know, we can do better than that. And put it in perspective, we had better emergency rural health care in 1950 when my grandfather practiced than we do today. We can fix those things if we just have a little bit of leadership in the legislation. Another area is education. We need to do pre-K education. 4K is an easy step we could do the first year. It may take a little while to phase in the rest, but those kids, if someone is just reading to them, their vocabulary exponentially expands, and it's the greatest investment that a state can make in our government. In other areas, we've got to pay our teachers. And Lord knows they've been neglected and criticized by the legislature, and then those get up and beat their chest about test scores going up. It's because what teachers did 40 years ago, starting the process of making sure our kids could read by 3rd grade. Those are taking credit for it, and at the same time they criticize them and then offer them that penny ante $500 raise. We've got an opportunity and education as well to fund our schools. You know, if we hadn't given all our money away, that's why our roads are deteriorating, our bridges. I mean, do y'all remember in our lifetime that we've had 500 bridges out, or even heard this issue of what's happening with our roads? It's because they gave it away. We can fix those issues. And on education, last but not least, we need to do like we're doing in my 5 counties up northeast Mississippi around Tupelo. I'm from Chickasaw County, population 18,000, just a regular county. If you can't get a grant or scholarship otherwise, and you want to go to the community college, you can go tuition free. It's not a full boat ride like Bernie talked about, but it's $1,450 a semester. They're doing it in the Northeast District now, some on the coast, some separate counties. Tennessee copied us, and they're doing it statewide. And it's only about $6 to $8 million that it would take the state to implement that program. Our county, it only cost Chickasaw $22,000 last year. And that's huge for those that you want to put on that trade skill track, to go have an opportunity to be exposed to technologies and things that will help them get a good trade and stay here. You know, what happens with parents that want to send their kids, that want to go to a 4-year college, they get $40,000 in debt and they got to leave the state. You know, I'm a back row Baptist because I'm always late, and I sit on the back row, but I look at Houston, how many people have left my hometown that I graduated with, and now I look at the ones who are still there, their kids are leaving. I mean, they're going to Austin, Texas. They're going to Nashville, left and right, Atlanta, even Birmingham. And so, you know, we can fix that if we just give them a break on their tuition and those costs. I've mentioned the issues y'all asked me to address, but there are a lot more. I'm going to be here and have an opportunity to talk with you because I understand the issues that you deal with. But these 4 issues that I'm talking about, if you want better roads, then join me. If you want better schools and teachers' pay, then join me. If you want to see our state grow and have better health care, then join me. And if you want to see cleaner government, then join me. I ask for your vote. I'm Jim Hood. I want to be your next governor. Thank you.
Good morning. It's good to be here in Biloxi. God has truly blessed me to be here today. Thank you again. I'm Robert Schuler Smith, and I am for a one Mississippi and a Mississippi for all. Let me tell you a little bit about my background. I grew up in a family who helped lead the civil rights movement along with the major civil rights figures. My dad, who's 77 years old, he turned 77 the other day, he saw Medgar Evers every day almost. The pathologist who treated Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner stayed at my grandfather's house and actually gave my dad something for his cold. So just about every major civil rights leader, black, white, Jewish, stayed and mingled with our families. So I'm for everyone, all Mississippians. My grandfather was the founder of Head Start, one of the original founders of Head Start, so I understand the importance of an early education. My family had the first modern African-American bank in the state of Mississippi, and I've been practicing law for almost 23 years. I am a district attorney. I've served 3 terms in Hinds County, our capital city. I've had a chance to look at every aspect of our government. And I can tell you that I am the only candidate that can move Mississippi forward, and I can tell you why. You need a skilled attorney and not a career politician to read, interpret, and help the public understand the legislation. A lot of times our legislatures don't even read what's being passed. When they pass these laws, they have to explain later on to the public what it means. And sometimes they don't even read it. They allow lobbyists to tell them what to do. That should not be. We should be able to tell the public before we pass any legislation how it affects and impacts the state of Mississippi. Lobbying laws, again, they need to change. Because if we're going to have lobbyists instead of our legislatures, who, again, we respect their profession, but some of them are passing laws and they're not lawyers. Some of them are passing laws and cannot explain to you the impact that it's having on the state of Mississippi. I am the only candidate who will address important issues, whether you agree with it or not, such as the flag. The state of New Jersey took down the flag that represented Mississippi a few months ago. I'm the only candidate that's willing to say that we need to change the flag that represents all Mississippians. That does not mean that people cannot celebrate the flag and fly it on their private property, but that means a lot to change the flag, because what is that saying to all the corporations around the United States and the world? We are now welcoming huge corporations to provide jobs, entertainment, tourism. Everything would change. Instead of people leaving Mississippi, our best and brightest, some of the students who I went to school with, I went to Tougaloo College, undergraduate, thank you, and St. Louis University School of Law. I was so glad to get out of there, graduate. Very excellent law school. My colleagues, for example, Dr. Marcus Ware, Harvard, MD, PhD, Dr. Stefan Wheelock, graduated from Brown, PhD. These are the best and brightest who wanted to stay in Mississippi, but for a lot of reasons, they're in other places. We have to understand that the politicians who have been in office for decades don't even know that the state auditor's office a few months ago, with our current budget, said that teachers deserve up to $14,000 raise per year. And none of our elected officials have fully funded education. Every time I go to the legislature, every 4 years, on district attorney business. I see signs being held up, fully fund education. I see it every time, and I'd say to myself, that hasn't happened yet? So because of the political season and the political pressure that teachers have given everyone, because they spend more time with our kids than some of our parents. And they deserve the assistance that they need. They are getting part-time jobs. That is absolutely absurd for our teachers to have part-time jobs. I will sign immediately the pay that they deserve. My mother was a teacher. My aunts were teachers. My uncles were teachers. And they work very hard. And they have saved a lot of lives. I can save more lives and more money here in the state of Mississippi than any other candidate. Our teachers need our parents to participate in their lives. And if our parents are not going to participate, then we have to put in place something that gives them a warning. If they refuse to participate, then we will make them go to parenting classes. Because our teachers deserve the help from our parents. And we have good parents, we have good teachers, good administrators, but we have to have our parents involved. Many people throughout the state of Mississippi, over 70%, between 70 and 80%, agree, and there's an initiative that's going on across the state to legalize marijuana. Imagine the Mississippi Delta, where they're saying that in a few years it could be bankrupt. Imagine a crop growing in Mississippi that is already legal. The University of Mississippi has had a research center and a farm, as well as Mississippi State, but Ole Miss has had a research center in place for marijuana research for decades. That research center receives $50 and $60 million from health institutes, from the government. Imagine we have states that are passing the legislation to legalize a plant that has proven to be helpful. The state of California has tackled their opioid crisis by starting to allow doctors to prescribe marijuana-based medicine that helps with the opioid crisis. I believe the pharmaceutical companies know exactly what they're doing when they make these drugs with side effects that are harmful to our citizens. And we have to find innovative ways to fight the crisis. Instead of arresting our kids, arresting doctors, let's see what the pharmaceutical companies, how they can be held accountable, because they're making profits and we ought to challenge that. We need to figure out how to read everyone's record fairly, neutrally. And if you read the record, you'll know that I am the best candidate for the state of Mississippi, and judge me on my record. We have to look at other candidates who receive campaign contributions from lawyers, and the community does not see any of that lawsuit money at all in our communities. I've asked. It's gotten worse. We are living in a time where we should move forward. And yes, judge me based on my record, but it would be historic to have the first African-American governor in the state of Mississippi and welcome everyone here to the state of Mississippi. And we can all move forward in race relations. We can all move forward in economics. We can all move forward in so many ways. Imagine what the world would look, how they would look at Mississippi, how they would want to visit us, how they would want to invest in Mississippi. How many dollars does that mean for everyone in the state of Mississippi? I'm qualified and passionate. I love Mississippi. I'm from Mississippi. Thank you.
It is a pleasure indeed to be here. Thank you for this opportunity to come before you and share my vision for Mississippi. Many of you have had an opportunity to hear me before, and so I thank you for your desire to continue to journey on this process with me as we together create a better Mississippi. As stated, I am Belisha P. Williams, Democratic candidate for governor. You have heard the rest. Now it's time to hear the best. I am convinced that together we can move Mississippi to a better place. I am committed to serving this state from a position of love, compassion, and commitment to achieve what we have for decades been denied: affordable health care for all, economic stability, quality education, criminal justice reform, a stable infrastructure, and environmental protection. And you may say, how do we achieve that? Well, let me go to this fact, that I will go get the billions of dollars that was left on the table to expand Medicaid. We can have affordable health care for all our citizens, period. We can do that. We can make sure that there is nothing that prevents people from getting coverage because of pre-existing conditions. We can make sure that we provide preventive care to include mental health screenings. We are 44th in mental health. We are 50th in health care because we are 50th in health care quality and 50th in health care affordability. We pay more for less, and as a consequence, we have the #1 mortality rate and the #1 infant mortality rate. Health care has to be a priority for Mississippi, and we can make sure that we take care of our people. We have a moral obligation to do so. Quality education. You know, I have served our public school system as a 2nd and 4th grade teacher. I understand how children come into a classroom and everything about that classroom says to them, you don't care about me. When they have inadequate facilities, when they have inadequate instructional materials, and when they have inadequate quality of education. We can make sure that we provide our children a quality education. We can fully fund the Mississippi Adequate Education Program, and I'm committed to ensuring that that becomes a reality. It kind of tickles me to hear career politicians talk about how they don't like career politicians. We don't need to spin the wheel. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. What it takes is commitment to do the things we say we're going to do. And what you're looking at is a person who will move words to action. When it comes to our infrastructure, we can restore our crumbling infrastructure. It has been a question of taking money away and not doing the basic maintenance. Our attention goes to our roads, and rightfully so, since with 30% of our major roads are in poor conditions. Our bridges, nearly 600 now, are closed because of poor conditions or because they are completely condemned. But that's not all infrastructure is about. We have to think about our communication system. Talk about third world. You know, we are like a third world country when it comes to communication and internet services. 49th in opportunity and infrastructure. 50th in healthcare. 48th in economy. 46th in education. 45th in fiscal stability. They own responsibility for those rankings. I am here as a former officer in the United States Army, as a school teacher, and as a retiree from Jackson State. I'm asking each one of you for your vote, and not only for your individual vote, but to go back and share with your family, your friends, and your constituents that Felicia P. Williams for governor is the best choice, a better Mississippi. All here now. I am committed to serving with honesty, loyalty, respect, and selfless service. That is what separates me from the rest. I am committed to being your servant. This is Mississippians' money, not individuals who get in position and fail to serve us. Let me fight for you. God bless you and thank you.